Our Gospel reading this morning comes from Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 43. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him.
Now as they travelled on, there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she said, If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease."
And while Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they had said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years old. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
She had plenty of reasons to be terrified. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she was desperate. Desperate for help. Desperate for healing. But she wasn't supposed to be there in the crowd, sneaking through, just trying to touch the hem of his coat. Surely if she could just touch even that, she would be healed. Surely. But she wasn't supposed to be there. And if she got found out, she was in trouble. Culture and custom said, "You're not meant to be there." Social courtesy said, "You're not meant to be there." The law said she wasn't supposed to be there. Leviticus 15 read, "If a woman has a flow of blood for several days outside her monthly period, or if her flow continues beyond her regular period, she shall remain unclean as long as the flow continues, and for 7 days after it stops. Anyone who touches her is unclean, and anyone who touches anything she has touched will be unclean." She had been bleeding for 12 years. She had been ritually unclean for 12 years. For 12 years, anyone she touches has been rendered ritually unclean. If she touches someone, they are prohibited from having social contact with anyone else for the rest of that day. For 12 years, she has been a persona non grata. She was supposed to stay home. She's supposed to avoid any contact with anyone. And this has gone on for 12 years. She's not supposed to be out in public, pushing her way through the crowd, trying to touch Jesus, or even the hem of his garment. She had plenty of reasons to be terrified, and plenty of people to be terrified of, including Jesus, if she made him unclean. This story says to me, how many of us are like her? Sneaking around with our heads down, afraid of being recognised, desperately hiding the truth about ourselves for fear of being shunned and isolated, for fear of being looked on as filth, desperate to find some cure, some relief, but terrified of what it would take to actually grab hold of it. So she pushed away through the crowd, her face hidden, her name unknown, taking chances. It was a momentary opportunity. Jesus was in a hurry. This was no time to interrupt him. He was on a mission of mercy, dealing with an emergency. A little girl was dying. There was not a moment to lose. The little girl was 12 years old. For 12 years she'd been healthy and happy. For 12 years she'd grown up as the precious daughter of one of the most important men in the town. To her 12 years she had everything. But now her life was hanging by a thread. This was no time to interrupt Jesus. He had more important business to attend to. He had a little girl's life to save. If I could just touch the edge of his coat as he hurries by, surely that will be enough. Surely that will make me better. So she did. Head down, she pushed through the crowd and touched his coat as he hurried by. And immediately she felt the bleeding stop. She had been right. She'd been healed. The disease was gone. No more feeling anemic and lethargic. No more hiding in the shadows, avoiding everyone. She pulled her scarf tightly around her face and tried to slip back into the crowd. She'd come for what she had come for, and she was off. No harm done. No one had recognised her. No one had to know it was her who touched the hem of his cloak. She'd just melt back into the crowd and slip off home. Who touched my clothes? Jesus stopped. Who touched me? Jairus is pulling on his arm. Who cares who touched you? Come and save my daughter quickly before it's too late. Who touched me? She froze in fear. She'd been found out, busted. She meant no harm. She was desperate. She'd been careful not to interrupt, to not get in the way. But now she was going to be exposed. Now the game was up. She had plenty of reasons to be terrified. She wasn't supposed to be there. So she fell to her knees at Jesus' feet, shaking like a leaf, and fessed up. She knew she was in for it, but there was nowhere to hide. He knew. Somehow he knew. And Jesus reached out his hand. Daughter, you took a risk of faith and it's paid off for you. Welcome back to the world of the healthy. Shalom. Shalom. May peace and health and happiness and wholeness be yours. May your illness be gone for good." This was amazing. She hadn't been shunned at all. She had been touched by one who knew why she was supposed to be untouchable. And yet she had been lifted to her feet and embraced by compassion. She had been commended in public. She had been given his blessing. She had been offered healing beyond her wildest dreams. Not just physical healing, but social healing, emotional healing, public acceptance. How often are we like that woman in the crowd? How often can we not see beyond the little bit of something that would make life more bearable? How often are we only too willing to settle for overcoming the main symptom and then just slip back into the crowd without daring to imagine what life could really be like? How often do we just look for that little touch from Jesus and from his body, the church? Just that little bit of something to make us feel better, a little touch just to get us through the week. How often do we think that we're not worth many more than that? Surely God's got more important things to do. Surely there are more important people to attend to. Surely there's a 12-year-old girl somewhere dying of hunger or disease who warrants God's attention much more than me. Who am I to expect Jesus to stop and take notice? So we just slip through the crowd for a little touch, just a little something to make life bearable, and then slip off again, unnoticed, unimportant, unchallenged, unblessed. Our masks still in place, fear and shame and loneliness still wrapped tightly around us. But Jesus thinks you're worth so much more than that. Nothing is more important than us, each one of us, every one of us. There is nothing else that matters so much that Jesus would let you pass by and leave you to fend for yourself. Jesus is not content to see you just get a little touch just to make you feel better. He wants to see you healed and whole, strong and confident, accepted and loved. He wants to do more than just close your wounds and stop the bleeding. He wants to lead you into wholeness, to a wholeness you cannot possibly imagine, and a fullness of life beyond your wildest dreams. And if you just slip off into the crowd, I reckon he would be left there with a tear in his eyes, still asking, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" Because he reckons you're worth so much more than that. He's got so much more for you that he wants to give you. And he wants you to follow him, to dance with him, to learn from him, to share life and love and joy and suffering with him. He wants us to lay aside our fears, our shame, our isolation, to lay aside the only self we've ever known, and to follow him into the open, wide spaces of God's love and mercy. But Christ won't force you. He won't force you. When the bread is broken at this table, you can reach out your hand and touch him and then just slip back into the crowd, strengthened to get through the week, but without staying to find out what Jesus might be asking of you, what he might be offering you. And if you do that, you're not going to be punished or exposed, but Jesus will still be asking, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" Longing to give you all that he wants you to have, longing for you to accept the full gift of his very self. But if you will stop and offer him yourself in trembling truthfulness, then he will offer himself to you, open himself to you so that you might be healed by that wholeness, so that your brokenness might be drawn out, that you might be raised to new life, to fullness of life, to life lived in the full glory of God and the joy of all the earth. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, it's offered to you today. Amen.